Let me tell you the facts here. This is beyond disrespectful to the country, to the men and women, the millions who have fought, bled, died, were injured defending and fighting under that flag. Look, NFL players, you want to protest, go knock yourselves out. But when you disrespect the flag, you're doing nothing for the people in this country to advance the ball for the forgotten men and women that are suffering. And frankly, you're spitting in the eye of every service member who did serve, fight, bleed, and die under that flag. And what's even more sad, a Pittsburgh Steelers player, the former Army Ranger, Alexandro Villanueva, he was even criticized by his own coach. After the game, his own coach, Mike Tomlin, said this. Take a look.
Many of them felt like something needed to be done. I asked those guys to discuss it, and whatever they discussed, that, we have 100% participation or we do nothing. They discussed it for an appropriate length of time. They couldn't come to an understanding, so they chose to remove themselves from it. They were not going to be disrespectful in the anthem, so they chose not to participate. But at the same time, many of them were not going to accept the words of the president. So we decided to sit it out, to not take the field. I was looking for 100% participation. We're going to be respectful of our football team.
Now, as I said, we'll have more on Alejandro later in the program. Suffice to say, his jersey skyrocketed to #1 on NFL.com. That speaks volumes. Now, I'm not sure why it's so hard for so many NFL players to understand why Americans don't want to see the flag and the national anthem disrespected on Sunday, on game day. And to me, one of the best moments, you watch an NFL game, is when it's over. You have warriors, the best of the best athletes, both sides. They unite. They get in a circle. They say a prayer of thanks. That I love. If the NFL of players, you want to choose to make political statements, you have every right to do it. And I'm predicting right here and now tonight that the fans that disagree and find it offensive, they're going to flee. That's also their right. Look, I don't support boycotts. I never have. But I'm also not interested in watching this behavior and the sign of disrespect every Sunday. As of today, Saturday is now my football day, unless this changes. Not to mention, this so-called show of unity in the NFL is already showing signs of cracking and is getting a negative response. Take a look at some of these headlines. Hollywood Reporter, Ben Roethlisberger regrets Steelers boycotting the anthem. Trump supports fan boos. Deadline, Hollywood, Sunday Night Football ratings down again on day of player protests. Grabian, Roger Goodell, ignoring league's own rules and letting players protest anthem. CBS Denver, Von Miller, ads being pulled after the anthem protest. He's a star player for the Broncos. The New York Post, to my limit, stadium worker quits after the Bills protest the anthem. And just to put things in perspective tonight, for all of you out there, for all these NFL players that want to take a knee and disparage the flag and the men and women who fought and died for it. Let's do a little comparison. It costs on average $92.98 for a single ticket to an NFL game, and that's just the average. Family of four, they're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to attend. Never mind, you want to buy a beer, hot dog, a Coke? Forget it. The average NFL salary, $2.4 million. Some players making tens of millions of dollars and even hundreds of millions during the course of their careers. And by the way, they deserve it. That's fine. They're great athletes. Now, meanwhile, the average salary for a private in the military is under $41,000 a year. Now, think about this for a second. NFL players, they have an opportunity to make millions of dollars because of men and women who make a modest salary that risk everything, their lives, to give them the freedom to play this great game. And here's another dose of reality. If average men and women protested and pissed off their customers at work, they probably wouldn't have a job. We are all the customers, by the way, of the leftists in Hollywood and all these pro sports athletes. So should the same standard apply to them? And as for the president's comments, under President Obama, get this, millions and millions more Americans went on food stamps. And by the way, we didn't keep our doctors, we didn't keep our plans, million more in poverty. And by the way, he doubled the national debt for our kids and grandkids. And the president right now, he's trying to make policies that are better for the people in this country, especially those left behind. So it seems to me, you people protesting, you have no clue what the president's plans are. And as the president said, this is about respect. The one thing that should unify us, respect for the flag, respect for our anthem, respect for the servicemen and women that fought under that flag. And for those claiming this is all about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, yeah, I'm a total believer in it. I make my living doing this. But you know what? These players have every right to protest. But some of them are massive hypocrites when it comes to freedom of speech on the field. You know, there's a reason the NFL, some call it the no fun league. Take a look at these examples. Celebrations banned, including twerking and shooting a bow and arrow in the end zone. Is that a violation of free speech? They're not allowed to taunt another player or team. They're prohibited from using abusive, threatening, or even insulting language or gestures. Players are not allowed to remove their helmet in the field of play or in the end zone. And players have been fined for wearing special cleats to raise awareness for important issues like mental health and domestic violence. And the league, by the way, refused to let a player wear pink to honor his mother, who is a breast cancer survivor, after the month of October. And the NFL even turned down the Dallas Cowboys' request to wear decals to honor the 5 police officers who were killed during a shooting rampage, if you remember, back in 2016. Aren't these violations of freedom of speech? Where's the outrage over all that? Where are the protests? And by the way, where are the so-called displays of unity? Not to be cynical, the NFL threatened to fine Avery Williamson of the Tennessee Titans. He wanted to wear a 9/11/01 Never Forget on his cleats for the 15th anniversary of the worst terror attack in our history. I happen to be a big fan of RG3. He got in trouble for wearing a No Jesus, No Peace T-shirt. KNOW, and they made him turn it inside out. And RG3 also got fined 10 grand for wearing a Reebok T-shirt because it wasn't Nike, and Nike's sponsored by the NFL, or this sponsors the NFL. And some NFL players, they get fined for wearing Beat headphones on the field. The NFL only cares about freedom of speech because they're sponsored by Bose. So nice try, Roger Goodell. You're arbitrarily enforcing the so-called rules as it relates to free speech. And, of course, the media is going insane over President Trump calling these NFL players out and trying, those in the left trying to make this about race, even though it clearly is not. Let's take a look.
Race, and you can't help but talk about race with this.
If you have any question in your mind as to whether or not he is race baiting at a certain point of time, just think of Charlottesville. It'll give you some clarity.
The president comes out and says this is not about race. That's a little bit like saying I'm not a crook. If you have to say it, you're already in trouble.
SOB, referring to NFL players who peacefully protest racial injustice, SOB, that language far stronger than what the president said about white supremacists in Charlottesville.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that is a bit of a dog whistle that is being played out there.
The protesters were almost entirely black, and the team owners whom the president was calling upon to fire or suspend those players are almost entirely white, and the president chose to launch this campaign in front of an almost all-white crowd in Alabama.
Is President Trump a racist? Is he making racist appeals to his supporters?
See, we're going to be different on this show than all of those shows. Now, the president came out and said specifically these comments he made have nothing to do with race. Watch the president.
I watched a little bit. I was not watching the games today. Believe me, I'm doing other things. But I watched a little bit, and I will say that there was tremendous solidarity for our flag and for our country. This has nothing to do with race. I've never said anything about race. This has nothing to do with race or anything else. This has to do with respect for our country and respect for our flag.
You know, the only person who's tried to make this about race is the person who started these protests. Remember Colin Kaepernick called President Trump, Hillary Clinton, both of them racist. Watch this.
You have Hillary, who's called black teens or black kids super predators. You have Donald Trump, who's openly racist. So what is this country really standing for?
Again, that's perfectly fine. Kaepernick, you want to say that, go right ahead. But when President Trump defends the military, defends the flag, defends the anthem, you know what? They all fought for this. It's a massive issue. And if the NFL wants a league full of Colin Kaepernicks, good luck with that. Because I predict, Roger Goodell, pay close attention. People will change the dial. They'll stop going to games. As a matter of fact, they already are. Saturday is going to be my football day, and Sunday you'll watch ratings and revenue decline precipitously.